Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best day movie-related show on the internet, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. It's an honor and a privilege to have you guys joining me here today as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that sorts of good stuff. And we're going to get into all that stuff, starting with this right off the top. We all know that there is a brand new Fast and Furious spin-off movie coming, starring the characters of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham and their characters known as Hobbs and Shaw. Well, it's no longer just theoretical. They've actually started production on this thing. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has just posted a picture on his Instagram showing Jason Statham and director David Leitch on set. Again, everything you would expect to see. Cool looking cars, sharp looking clothes, a beautiful looking building in the background. And nice touch that Dwayne decided to put this up in black and white. That's a pretty cool idea. So The Rock wrote this. Long-awaited Fast and Furious spin-off movie. The evolution has officially begun. Hobbs and Shaw is electric. My partner in heavy crime and fun, Jason Statham, is looking like $1 million and holding it all down. Our visionary and badass director, David Leitch, just directed Deadpool 2 at the helm and ready to evolve the franchise in exciting and fresh new ways. And as always, our $7 production, which is his production company, of course. It's a good looking picture, man. It looks slick. I mean, it's a behind the scenes start of production idea. And look, I've made no secret about this. I have been excited about the idea of this Hobbs and Shaw movie for a while. One of my big criticisms, actually, of the last Fast and Furious movie was they set up this great chemistry between Hobbs and Shaw, and they never really explored it much. They never gave us much screen time with the two characters, and I thought they were fantastic together on screen. So I have loved the idea of them doing this spin-off movie. I think they're great characters. I think they'll juxtapose against each other really well, and I'm excited for it. Now you bring in David Leitch, who of course just directed Deadpool 2. He's one of the co-directors of the John Wick films, so that's awesome. He's supposed to be doing a Highlander film as well. At some point, he still says he's doing it. He's still saying at some point, someday in the future, this Highlander film's going to happen. Whether that actually happens or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But I like the picture. It's showing me everything I wanted to see now. We just got to wait for, I don't know, probably 6 months for a trailer. All right, let's move on now to our main topics today. How do our main topics get selected here on the John Campea Show? It's really quite simple. You guys select them by emailing me your topics and questions to John@thejohncampeashow.com. That's John@thejohncampeashow.com. Make sure you guys put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep those emails to 90 words or less. Keep them to 90 words or less, or else I simply won't even be able to use the damn things because they'll be too big to fit on the screen. Okay, with that out of the way, let's dive into the first official topic today. And the first topic today comes to us from Rich Clark, who writes, The Nun is a huge success. Not only did it break the record for the biggest opening in the Conjuring franchise, but it's also the second biggest September opening of all time, with three of the top 5 September movies of all time being horror films. Do you think more studios will look to release future horror films in September as well? All right, thanks a lot for the question, Rich. And yes, The Nun opened huge. It opened huge to over $50 million, and yes, it is the biggest opening of any of the Conjuring films of all time. There is now, I believe, 5 in the franchise. Let's take a look at it. So, obviously, The Nun, opening weekend, that's the top line, is opening weekend. Opened to $53 million. That is like $12 million better than The Conjuring, the original Conjuring, which opened with 41.86. In third place is Conjuring 2, that opened to 40.41 million. Annabelle opened at 37.13 million, and Annabelle Creation opened to 35 million. Now, this will give us a little bit of an indication about how well The Nun could potentially do. So we see The Conjuring opened with 41, made 319 million. Conjuring 2 opened to about the same amount, ended up with 320, 257 for Annabelle, 306 for Annabelle Creation. I really like Annabelle Creation, by the way. So I think it's safe to say that we're looking at probably the 4th film in the Conjuring franchise here that will break the $300 million mark. And keep this in mind. This movie was made for a grand total of $22 million. $22 million. And I believe at $22 million, I think that's the biggest budget they've ever had on a Conjuring film. And if it's going to follow the pace that the other films did, I think it's pretty safe to say this film is going to cross the $300 million mark worldwide. Now, not only did it do great for the Conjuring series, it did great, as you point out, in September. It is now the second biggest opening weekend of all time in the month of September, trailing only behind It. Here's the top 10 opening weekends in September. We got It at number 1, at way ahead in first place at $123 million. Now we've got The Nun at 53, Hotel Transylvania 2 and Hotel Transylvania 1 come up in third and fourth with $48 and $42 million. Insidious Chapter 2 in fifth place with 40. Kingsman, Sweet Home Alabama. Remember that movie? I like Sweet Home Alabama. Sully, Magnificent Seven, and The Equalizer round out. What is interesting in this, as Rich pointed out, is that 3, let's not count Hotel Transylvania 2 or Hotel Transylvania 1, but 3 of the top 5 films of all time in September are horror films. They're horror films. You would think that, October, the month of Halloween, that's the time to release horror films. But it seems like with 3 of the top 5 in September, maybe that's the time. Because let's look at October. The biggest openings in October of all time, there are 3 horror films on there, but they're in the top 10. And only one of them's in the top 5. We got Paranormal Activity 3, which opened at $52 million. That's in the 3rd spot. But then you got to go all the way down to Paranormal Activity 2 in the 9th spot at $40 million, and The Grudge in the 10th spot at $39 million. So it kind of looks, oddly enough, like October, or September, I should say, may be the better month to release these horror films. Now, this is all just anecdotal, and who's really to say? Halloween, of course, is going to be opening in a few weeks, so that's going to add to that total. I'm sure the Halloween film will break $39 million, so you can add Halloween to probably the top 10 list of all-time opening October films. But it is interesting. Look, I'm not a big fan of The Nun. I went in with high expectations. I loved Annabelle Creation. And The Nun is not awful. It's not terrible. It has some redeeming elements to it. Absolutely it does. But overall, I thought it was a little bit of a step down, but there's no denying the success. And I think a lot of the success can be attributed to how good Annabelle Creation was. People saw Annabelle Creation. They couldn't wait for the next one. Here we got The Nun, the next one, the Conjuring franchise. Big opening weekend, another huge success. And they just keep rolling with making these movies for $6 million, $22 million, $12 million, and they all cap over $200 and $300 million in the box office. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a recipe of great success, and we'll just have to see how far The Nun can go. All right, let's move on now to topic number 2. And the second topic today comes to us from Julianne Doyle, who writes, "So far, my favorite film of the year is Mission Impossible Fallout. I was wondering if you saw that it just became the biggest box office success in Tom Cruise's career. Considering all of the iconic films Cruise has done, how big of a deal is it that Fallout is his highest?" And yep, you're absolutely right, Jillian. It is the biggest box office success of all time for Tom Cruise's career. And it's weird. When you think of a film star like Tom Cruise, you would think that maybe one of his films would be one of the billion-dollar films. But they're not. But Fallout crosses the $700 million mark safely and is now the biggest box office success of his career. Actually, it's funny because of his top 5 box office movies, 4 of them are from the Mission Impossible franchise. So Mission Impossible Fallout is now officially the biggest box office success of Tom Cruise's career with $726 million, followed by another Mission Impossible movie, Ghost Protocol, that made $649 million. Then another Mission Impossible movie, Rogue Nation, that came in at $682 million. Followed by War of the Worlds, directed by Steven Spielberg, for $591 million. And then rounding out the top 5, yet another Mission Impossible film, Mission Impossible 2 or MI2, that made $546 million. To say that the Mission Impossible franchise is the biggest bread and butter moneymaker for Tom Cruise is a wild understatement. Obviously, his number 1 films, 4 out of the top 5, all Mission Impossible films. And, it makes me realize he was trying to get another Mission Impossible franchise going under another name, Jack Reacher. He was trying to get that Jack Reacher series going. Then he tried to get, the Mummy series going. He wanted to have multiple big giant series running so that his top 5 films wouldn't just be dominated by one franchise. Didn't work out so well for The Mummy. I really like Jack Reacher 1. I know Jack Reacher 1 has its detractors. I'll tell you straight up, I really enjoyed that movie. Jack Reacher 2, what was it? Never Go Back, Never Back Down, Never Eat Shredded Wheat. I don't know what it was called off the top of my head, but Jack Reacher 2, not so good. So that wasn't going to be his next big franchise. The Mummy didn't end up being his next big franchise. Maybe Edge of Tomorrow, because they're still talking about doing another Edge of Tomorrow. Maybe that'll end up being his next big franchise. But as you go back and look at the films of Tom Cruise, you realize that aside from these Mission Impossible films, a lot of his films have done well. Like he's got a handful of films with the $200 to $300 million range that they've made worldwide, which is very respectable. But it is funny that when I first heard that Fallout was his biggest film ever, it surprised me a little bit, because you think of Tom Cruise as one of and he is, one of the truly biggest, most legit movie stars there's ever been in the business. So you just think that maybe 700-something million wouldn't be his biggest, but there it is. And obviously his bread and butter is Mission Impossible. And you're damn right, we're going to end up seeing a third, or I should say, yet another Mission Impossible film. There's no doubt about that at this point. So we're going to see another one, because he just keeps kicking them out. And even at his age, he still shows that he's got it. He is as good of an action star today as he has ever been. I will argue that till I'm blue in the face. At his age, approaching 60, he is as good of an action star today as he has ever been. And not just because he does these crazy stunts, not just because he does his own stunt work, not because he's hanging off the sides of planes, not because he's doing these halo jumps at night. No, because on screen, he's still believable in the role. Maybe more believable today in these action roles than he's ever been. So good on him. And Tom, keep cranking him out. All right, let's move on now to our third topic today. And our third official topic today comes to us from Drevin Mitchell, who writes, I know you're not the biggest fan of the Halloween movies. That's an understatement. But have you seen the reaction to the new one that the new one is getting out of Toronto? Huge response. Does seeing this kind of reaction do anything to get you more excited for the movie? All right. Thanks a lot for asking, man. And we've talked about this a little bit over the past couple of weeks. I am not, admittedly, the biggest Halloween fan in the world. Quite frankly, I don't really like any Halloween movie, and that includes the original. I'm firmly in the minority on that. I recognize and I acknowledge its all-time classic status. Absolutely. But that doesn't change the fact that it's not a movie that worked for me. Therefore, as the new Halloween was coming up, I had no interest. But we've talked about on the show that the first trailer came out, and I'm like, that's pretty good. And then the second trailer came out, and I'm like, I'm on board. This looks great. I'm very excited for it. So the trailers, even before the first reviews started coming out of the Toronto Film Festival the other day, the movies already got me on board. This is the first Halloween movie I've ever been legitimately excited to watch. And I am, but the trailers already did that. But now, as the email suggests, they have screened the film at the Toronto Film Festival, and the reviews are now pouring in. And the reviews are very good. As of right now, let me just pull it up here just to double check. The last time I checked, Halloween was sitting at, the new Halloween movie was sitting at 76%. Let's see if it's gone up or down at this point. It is still at 76%. So, as of right now, Halloween's sitting at 76%. If you had asked me a year ago, when they said they were doing this new Halloween film, where I thought the critic rating might end up, I probably would have said 30 or 40. And only that high because some diehard, horror critic fans would just be giving it a pass anyway. But some of the reviews are coming out are legitly very, very solid. And a 76% is really good. Let's look at some of the reactions that Halloween is getting out of the Toronto Film Festival. Entertainment Weekly gives it a positive, saying, the movie mostly works because it's so fundamental and funny too. Michael still never speaks. His mask and his slow, deadly, deliberate walk say everything they need to. Nerdist gives it a positive review. Katie writes, for all the deep, fascinating semiotic analysis of the film, It's also just a great Halloween movie. IndieWire also gave it a positive review. The movie would make a harmless, discardable remix of standard horror notes if not for Jamie Lee Curtis, who charges through the movie as if she's never stopped running 4 decades back. Hollywood Reporter also gives it a thumbs up, saying Carpenter should be pleased, and so should the genre buffs. For once, this is a pick their less geeky girl/boyfriends should also enjoy. A couple more. The Playlist gives it a positive review. Thrilling, atmospheric, and brutally violent, Halloween 2018 delivers exactly what fans want from the series and then some. But not everybody. There are critics out there who are saying this isn't as good as we were hoping it would be. Business Insider says, for a project that has been riding high with anticipation from Halloween fans, this is no way to reward them. Toronto Now writes, Jamie Lee Curtis, who's nearing 60, remains a formidable screen presence, brings some genuine tension to her scenes with Greer. And then let's go to a horror website, Bloody Disgusting. They like it. They say, all in all, Halloween is a worthy entry in the franchise. The core cast is good to great, as is the violence and the gore. Everything really clicks at the finale. So there we have it. The first critic reviews are coming out. The trailers look good. The reviews are fairly positive. You know, when I read the first reactions on Twitter, they were outstanding. Like I figure it's going to be like 99%. Now as the actual full reviews are rolling in, they're a little bit more tempered, but still far better than I thought they were going to be. And like I said, for this film to sit at 76% is way beyond where my expectations were if you had asked me a year ago. Even after watching the really good trailers, my expectations probably would, maybe they'll get to 60. Sitting at 76%, getting a lot of good positive buzz coming out of there, even from non-traditional horror fan types of critics. I think that speaks volumes. Now, whether or not these reactions increase my excitement for the film, honestly, no, only because the 2 trailers have done already the job of getting my anticipation level up. So since the trailers have already brought my anticipation level up, these reviews don't do much for me. Now, had I not seen those trailers and I read these reviews, yes, it would have elevated my expectations, but the trailers already did that job. So not much longer to wait before we all get to see Halloween. All right, let's move on now to topic number 4. And the 4th topic today comes to us from our Patreon supporter, Dan Ketchum. Thank you so much, Dan, for being a Patreon supporter. CBS chairman and CEO Leslie Moonves is apparently being forced out over a sexual abuse scandal, and it looks like he might get a $100 million severance package. Is it right for someone to get this golden parachute if he has done this kind of thing and has damaged the CBS image? Surely the CBS board has other options and doesn't really have to pay him this. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. And I almost didn't take this question because I normally don't like to talk about this type of stuff, but it is fascinating, so let's get into it for a second. First of all, let me warn all of you that what I'm going to say is going to make nobody happy. All right? No one's going to be happy with what I'm about to say. And that's fine. I'm very comfortable saying things nobody's happy with. But I think it needs to be said. So for those of you who haven't been following along, big head chief over at CBS, the guy who led CBS to becoming the #1 network in America. And by the way, with the news of him stepping down, the stock has fallen on CBS. The shareholders want him in the position, maybe not really, but on a practical level they do. And with the news of him leaving, their stock has dropped. Anyway, the guy who has led them to being the #1 network in America, multiple reports have come out. I believe it was from the New York Times, that I think the number's now up to a dozen former employees that claim he straight up assaulted them, forced them to do things, and women who refused to do things got blacklisted and lost their careers and lost their jobs from him. Now, at this point, it's important to point out, as it always is, that these at this point are all allegations. None of this has been proven, therefore it's all allegations and at that stage. But still, it's something that CBS has to sit up and take notice of when there's this many people. And so they are doing the right thing in addressing it. Now, the news came out that CBS and Leslie entered negotiations to have him leave, and that he could be getting upwards of $100 million payout to leave the company. This, understandably so, has some people very upset. And one way to look at it is that you are rewarding this guy for his bad behavior. That's a fair criticism. That a lot of people are looking at this situation, much like you pointed out in the email, that it looks like, depending on how you look at it, that you are rewarding this dude for his, I'm using the words bad behavior, but it goes beyond that. It's more than just bad behavior, if true. You're rewarding him for his bad behavior. And that is certainly a legitimate criticism. Here's the thing. This reminds me of a situation I had a bunch of years ago. Now, for those of you who aren't Canadian, you may have never heard of this. But one of the, if not the most infamous murder trials and murder cases in Canadian history was that, and if you're Canadian, you'll already know what names I'm about to say. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. These names are infamous in Canadian culture. Back in the 80s or 90s, this couple seduced, drugged, kidnapped, and murdered a number of young teenage girls. One of them that they murdered was Karla's sister. Together, they raped, drugged, and murdered a number of girls. As the case started to come to its conclusion, the government made a deal, the prosecution made a deal with Karla Homolka that I can't remember how much time she got, whether it was 10 years, 15 years, something like that. For argument's sake, let's just say 15. It might have been a smaller number, it might have been a bigger number, but for argument's sake, let's say 15. Karla Homolka got 15 years in exchange for her testimony against Paul, the husband. That the prosecution thought was really the main villain behind it all. I mean, she was clearly vile, but they saw him as the main one and they wanted to make sure they got him. When news of this plea bargain got out, a lot of Canadian citizens were outraged. Understandably so. Understandably so. That this woman who participated in the kidnapping, rape, and murder of these young girls is getting off with just like 10 to 15 years, whatever the number was. A lot of Canadian citizens were really, really upset with that. Now, fast forward a few years. I'm sitting in my criminal law class, and our professor brought in a judge from the Ontario Superior Court. And he came in and talked about that case to us. And he gave a really interesting perspective. He said this, that would not have been popular with a lot of Canadians, but he said this. He said, look, it was an unpopular decision for the prosecution to offer Karla Homolka that deal. But, this particular judge told us in our class, it was the right decision because there was some doubt, he said, that they were going to be able to convict. There was some doubt. They had a pretty good case, but there was some doubt that they were going to be able to convict Paul Bernardo of these crimes. And what the judge said is, what absolutely could not happen was that Paul Bernardo walks. They said that was the one thing, like, was it good that Karla Homolka gets a plea bargain deal? No. But was it at all acceptable that Paul Bernardo walks on this? It couldn't happen. It simply could not happen. At this point, they all knew he did it, but could they 100% guarantee that they were going to get a conviction when they took it to trial? And at that time, it looked good, but they weren't 100% convinced. And what the prosecution felt, what was best for the country, was that they guarantee this guy gets convicted because of what he did. And if that means we have to swallow the bitter pill that one of his partners in this, Karla, gets a 15-year sentence instead of life, like she should have got, then that's the price we have to pay to make sure that this guy doesn't walk. It was for, even though the public didn't like it, it was for the public good. For the public good, we had to make sure this guy got it. Now, what does this whole thing have to do with the Leslie Moonves situation? It reminds me a lot of that situation because of this. Right now, what CBS cannot afford to do, in my opinion, is have this guy stick around. In my opinion, if I'm a CBS executive, in my opinion is the number one priority, like for the government, was we have to make sure that Paul Bernardo gets convicted. This thing is, we've got to get him removed from his position, and we have to get him removed as quickly as possible. What is best for CBS right now is to get him out, and to get him out as quick as possible. And if that means we got to go in and negotiate with him and offer him a payout to get him out, so be it. What is best for CBS is to get him out. Let the government and the prosecution and the law deal with him as far as any other ways he may have broken laws, and he'll get what's coming to him. But that's the courts to decide. That's prosecution to decide. Let them worry about that. What is best for CBS, we just got to get him out. The longer he is in here with all this stuff going on, the worse it is for us and our company. We got to get him out. It is what's in everybody's best interest right now to get him out as fast as possible. Now, what everybody forgets about is that these people have contracts that guarantee them certain things. And what everybody forgets about is while he's being accused of all this stuff, he hasn't been found guilty of anything. And what CBS runs the risk of doing is this could be dragged out for months and months and months. It could be dragged out forever. We have to come to an agreement with him just to get him out now, and then let the courts deal with him. And if that means that we have to give him a little bit of money just to get him out now, then give him some money and get him out now. Now, what has been updated in the past 24 hours is that CBS and Leslie have reached an agreement. He's stepping down. He's out, and they have a $120 million buyout package that's going to be held in trust pending the result of investigations. Now, my guess here is the way this is all going to play out, and this is just my guess, is that they're going to say, hey, our investigation has come up limited, but we found that you did wrong here and here and here. Therefore, you're going to get a percentage of this $120 million, but not all of it. And then the rest will have to be up to see if prosecutors want to charge this guy with anything, but that's a totally separate matter. So what people got to understand is it's fine to feel outraged and it's fine to feel upset, but being outraged and upset doesn't change the fact if there are legal precedents, if there's legal procedure, if there are contracts, enforceable contracts involved that says, hey, if you get rid of me for any reason, you got to pay me this. Well, this is for any reason. So it looks like they came to a bit of a compromise. And honestly, as just an average entertainment fan, I really don't care if they give this guy some money. I don't care. I just think he needs to be ousted. I just think he needs to get out. And whatever facilitates getting him out faster is the best thing to do. And then let prosecution deal with them. Then let the government deal with them. I think if I'm a member of CBS or if I'm just an average fan, the best thing in everybody's interest right now is just do what you need to do to guarantee you get him out and get him out as fast as possible. I really don't care if he gets a few bucks on the way out. I don't care. It has nothing to do with me. Doesn't affect me whatsoever. All I know is we got to get him out. If I'm a CBS exec at this point. So that's kind of my feeling on it. I know that's not going to be popular with anybody. I know everybody just loves being angry and everybody just wants, no, throw him out and give him nothing and blah, blah, blah. And that's great, but that's not how the real world works. If you don't give him something and they don't make these arrangements with him that we're setting this in trust, where you'll probably get this, and that. If they don't do that, he could drag this out for months, and that's not good for anybody. That's just my opinion. And you know what? My opinion could change on that. I'm not sold on that opinion. That's my opinion right now, but I've only thought about this situation just a little bit. I mean, honestly, you could ask me tomorrow what I think about this, and my mind could change. And You guys may be able to send me in some arguments. I've got an open mind about this. You could totally change my mind. I'm not willing to fall on this sword, but that is how I think about it right now. That the best thing to do is just do what you need to do to ensure we get him out, and we get him out as fast as possible. Then let the law deal with him. But that's just, again, I'm not going to fall on that sword. If you guys have a different opinion, your opinion might be better than mine. Totally might be. Jump into the comment section. Let me know your thoughts about what you guys think, and we'll go from there. All right, let's move on now to the final emailed in topic today. And the final emailed in topic today comes to us from the Red Dragon, who writes, "It's one of those things that I read and thought there was no way it could be true, but it is. Marvel movies have crossed $4 billion at the box office in 2018 alone. I had to look it up multiple times. Can you recall anything like this ever happening before? And could we ever see something like this happen again?" All right, thanks a lot for the question, Red Dragon. And yes, it is strange and crazy to think, but the MCU in the calendar year of 2018 alone has made $4 billion this year. There are film franchises that have never come close to that movie in the length of their existence, let alone in just 1 year. Now, obviously, we're looking at 3 big installments came out. We obviously had Black Panthers, what they started this whole thing off with. Then they moved on to Avengers Infinity War, which cracked the $2 billion club, by the way. So that worked out very well for them. And then Ant-Man has now crossed the $600 million mark. And all in all, it has led to them having over $4 billion at the box office in just 2018 alone. Wrap your heads around that. In just 2018 alone, $4 billion. Has anything like this happened like this before? No, it hasn't. Will it ever happen again? Yep, it'll happen again. Not next year. Spider-Man, Far From Home, Captain Marvel, and Avengers 4, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they will not total $4 billion, and that's fine. It's going to be incredible. It'll crack $3 billion for sure. I don't think $4 billion, but whatever. But it will happen again. Because here's the thing, what we have never really had in our history before as film fans is the idea that you have a big successful franchise that also cranks out 3 movies a year. That's something we've never seen before. James Bond never put out 3 films in a year. Not that James Bond would have hit $4 billion, but you see what I'm saying. That is yet another unique aspect of this. Star Wars can put out The Force Awakens, but it's not putting out 4 films in 1 year. Or 3 films in 1 year. Fast and Furious isn't putting out 3 Fast and Furious movies in 1 year. Jurassic World and Jurassic Park aren't putting out 3 films in a year. At some point, it'll happen again, but it's probably going to be DC or Disney. Or maybe Star Wars, depending if they ever get to the point where they're doing 2 or 3 films a year. But it'll happen. And here's why. Because these films are going to come out, and at some point, MCU may move to 4 films a year. The DCEU may start cracking out big hits, and they may start putting out 4 films a year. It'll happen at some point someday. I don't know if it's going to happen next year. I don't think it's going to happen in 2019. I don't think it's going to happen in 2020, but it will happen again. So it's an amazing mixture of big hit films. The lowest one is Ant-Man and the Wasp, and that made over $600 million. You got Black Panther making over 1.3. You've got Avengers 3 making over $2 billion, and they all come out within about 6 months of each other. Nuts. It's nuts. But that is part of the unique circumstance and context that will make it very hard to beat in the future. Because again, we're not going to see Jurassic World put out 3 films in a year. We're not going to see Star Wars put out 3 films in a year. We're not going to see James Bond put out 3 or 4 films in a year. So DC may break it at some point. Clearly not this year. Clearly not next year. Marvel may very well break their own record. I don't think next year, but it's coming, and it will happen again. And we'll just have to see if franchises respond by not only putting out 1 film a year, but maybe 2 or 3. We'll just have to see if that ever happens. But as long as Marvel and DC are the only players in the game putting out that many films in a year as a part of their respective franchise, don't expect anybody else to catch that record. Because it's just not within their wheelhouse, not putting out that many films in 1 year. But amazing accomplishment. Yet another, put another check mark beside the box of Kevin Feige, yet another amazing accomplishment for Marvel and what they've done with these films. All right, guys, with all that out of the way, let's take some time now and move on to some live questions. You guys have been sending in some live questions, so let's get through. We've still got about 25 minutes here. So we're going to start things off with Vrinder Singh, who writes, just watched Final Score with Dave Bautista. It's Die Hard in a football stadium. Well, soccer stadium for us North Americans. It's Die Hard in a soccer stadium. Nothing spectacular, but I enjoyed it. However, I am biased towards it because I used to live next to the stadium where it was filmed. That's neat. So for those of you who haven't heard about this, and I'm not going to blame you if you haven't, there's a straight-to-VOD movie starring Dave Bautista called Final Score. And Vrinder just kind of nails it on the head. It's Die Hard in a soccer stadium. But here's the interesting thing. You got two other actors in it that I love. Ray Stevenson, who is, I think, the best Punisher we've ever had. And I love John Bernthal as Punisher, but I think Ray is the best Punisher we ever had. And we've also got Pierce Brosnan, former James Bond. And I love Pierce Brosnan as an actor. I think he's a great actor. Now, both Ray and Pierce do some pretty questionable Russian accents in it, but whatever. You can find the trailer. It's on YouTube. It looks silly and harmless enough. I'll tell you what, though. There is one shot in the trailer for this movie, Final Score, that makes me intrigued to watch it. And it's this awesome-looking shot where Dave Bautista is on a motorcycle driving down this concrete hallway in the stadium. And there's some terrorist on his motorcycle riding towards him. And as he's going by, Dave Bautista reaches out and grabs this fire extinguisher off the wall and boom, hits the dude crossing him in the face with the fire extinguisher. It's just a great shot. It looks pretty awesome. And a part of me was like, okay, I kind of want to see the movie just to see that shot. And a part of me gets thinking, man, if they have other action scenes and shots like that in the movie, this could be kind of fun. Now, I haven't watched it yet. Obviously, it's not a film that made it to theaters. It's a lower budget, straight to home video movie, so keep your expectations in check. But I'm glad you saw it, Vrinder, and I'm glad you're telling me you actually thought it was kind of cool. I'm actually thinking about checking it out. I am, because I got a kick out of the trailer. It's not going to be Shakespeare. It's not going to be great, but could have some fun to it. It looks like it might have some fun to it if that one shot alone is any indication. So thanks for sharing your thoughts, Vrinder. All right. Ben Rayner writes, with The Predator coming out this week, it's a shame that this movie has all this bad PR happening surrounding it right now. Are you following it? Yeah, honestly, I'll be honest. I don't know how to feel about it. Because, all right, for those of you who don't know what's going on, director Shane Black cast a friend of his who was convicted as a sex offender. Now, all he was really convicted of was sending emails to like a cousin. It's just creepy as hell, man. I don't even like talking about it. It's just creepy as hell. But to an underage cousin of his, and I guess, I didn't really read the story that much, but I guess it got graphic and whatever, and he was convicted as a sex offender. And that was like 10 years ago or something like that. By the way, guys, I haven't researched this deeply, so if you know some of the facts I'm saying are correct, feel free to correct me in the chat. Please do. But it happened like 10 years ago. He was convicted and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Fast forward now to this. Shane Black gives him a small role in the film. And there's a scene in the film where he hits on somebody. I think Olivia Munn. He hits on Olivia Munn. It's like a 1-minute scene. And they decide to cut it out of the film. And I don't know if they just cut the scene out of the film or if they cut the character out of the film altogether. I think maybe they just cut the scene. At any rate, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Only because of at what point do we, and I'm not making any statements here. I'm saying this is what goes on in my head. I'm just wondering about this. I'm sure there are arguments to be made on both sides. At what point do we say somebody's allowed to now just move on and continue on with their life and their career? And I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm not proposing any answer. I'm just saying this is what struggles in my head. Because here's an example. Let's say you're shooting a movie and you found out 10 years ago when a dude was like 22 years old, he was a kid, and he made mistakes in his life, he was on a bad path, he held somebody up at gunpoint at one point, right? So he held somebody up at gunpoint, which is a seriously traumatic experience for anybody, could ruin the rest of your life like that. You could have PTSD on that for the rest of your life. But let's say he does that. Do we say that that kid should never have a chance to redeem themselves and rehabilitate and become a contributing member of society and have a job in his career again? And again, I'm not saying anything. I'm just putting that out. These are the thoughts that go through my head. At what point do we draw, where do we draw that line? Where do we draw a line of saying, you know, at what point do we say you are allowed to rejoin us as a society at this point? Because what you did, you were punished for it. It happened X amount of time ago. You were punished. And at what point do we say we as a society are now willing to bring you back in and give you another chance to continue on with your life and career and do what you do? Maybe we say the line should be over here. Maybe we say the line should be over here. I don't have the answers. I certainly don't. But it is something I will confess has made me think a lot over the past, week or so since this story kind of came out. I'll say this, though. Average movie fans haven't even heard about this story. Average movie fans have not even heard about this. And I don't think average movie fans care. But those of us who travel the movie news sites and follow the threads and everything, we all know about it. It hasn't been made that big a deal out of, I don't think. Maybe it should be, maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. Again, I want to be very careful to say I haven't taken a side on this. I just don't know. But these are just the thoughts that go through my head. Look, if I'm Olivia Munn, who apparently she was pretty upset when she found out that the scene she did with this guy was a guy, because she didn't know. Olivia Munn, when she shot the scene with this guy, didn't know he had that criminal record. And apparently she was pretty upset. And she asked for the scene to be removed. I can understand that. Yeah. Do I think she had to do that? I don't think she had to, but do I understand her doing it? Yeah. Again, I don't know where I am on all that. I can be convinced or swayed either way. I just think there's more to think about than we often give it credit for. Manuel Fernandez writes, "Hey John, I hope you had a good weekend. I expected there to be good/decent word of mouth, but I never expected Halloween to have this much praise." Well, I mean, let's keep it in perspective. It's at 76%, which is very good. Very good. And I never expected it to be that high either. But it's not like it's up there with A Quiet Place. It's not like it's getting Quiet Place level praise at this point. But I will agree with you. Like, I never expected, if you asked me 6 months ago, when Halloween, the first reviews start coming out for Halloween, it's going to be at 76% at one point. I would have gone, nah. But here we are. And it is. And it's impressing more people than I thought it would. And that's good to see. Because, again, I think the trailers are winners. And I'm looking forward to see it. First time ever in my life that I can say I'm actually looking forward to seeing a Halloween film. All right. Kenneth Bravo writes, will Marvel announce any movies before Avenger 4 releases? I think so. I do. I think we're going to see 1 or 2 movies announced after Captain Marvel hits theaters, before Avengers 4 hits. And I think that's going to be part of their marketing campaign for Avengers 4. Because I think they're going to use announcements as future movies as mechanisms to increase the buzz for the upcoming Avengers 4. So a lot of people think use Avengers 4 to create buzz for the new movies. No. I think they're going to use the announcements of new movies to play into and grow and swell the enthusiasm for Avengers 4 going into it. So I'm guessing, and this is not based on insider information. No one's told me anything. I'm just speculating here. But my speculation at this point is that we will get an announcement of 1 or 2 movies in between Captain Marvel and before, like after Captain Marvel opens, before Avenger 4 opens. That's what I think we're going to hear. Ben Heyusa writes, John, all caps, hurry up and watch Searching ASAP. Oh my God, it's good, intense, and most of all, so realistic. Couldn't stop thinking about it after watching it. Ben, just add your voice to the growing throng. Everybody who has seen this movie is raving about it. John Cho, Deborah Messing. Trailers looked horrible, so I skipped on it up to now. But now everybody's saying Searching is awesome. And I believe it came in at number 5 at the box office this weekend as well. So it did pretty well. Came in at number 5. Probably would have done better if they did a better job with their trailers. Because, again, their trailers were abysmal. Just completely awful. But, hey, there we are. But, again, Ben, everybody who's talking about this movie is saying nothing but great things about it. So, yeah, I do got to check it out. Ben follows up with, so I did a triple header this past weekend with Searching. Then saw two other... Oh, I thought you meant... Then I saw Saw 2. No. Then saw 2 other films I've never seen. Hacksaw Ridge and Whiplash. Oh, my goodness. First of all, how have you not watched Whiplash and Hacksaw Ridge? But that's a great doubleheader if you've never seen either. Both of those are amazing. I really thought Hacksaw Ridge had a chance to win Best Picture. I really did. And I really did think Mel Gibson had a shot to win Best Director. I really did. And I really did an outside shot, but I thought Andrew Garfield could have won Best Actor as well. I was perfectly fine that he didn't, but I thought I would have been totally cool if he had won that award. Hacksaw Ridge is unbelievably good. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out. And Whiplash, Whiplash is Whiplash. So good. Won J.K. Simmons his first Academy Award. It's amazing. Nice doubleheader. All right. Ben follows up with, and also for the first time I watched The Disaster Artist, Molly's Game, Darkest Hour, and Wind River. All 4 of those. Molly's Game is my favorite. I was stunned that Molly's Game did not get a Best Picture nomination. I'm pretty sure it didn't. Let me just follow that up here. Molly's Game. Let me just double check here. Molly's Game got nominations for Best Adapted Screenplay, and that's it. Jessica Chastain should have been nominated for Best Actress, and it should have been nominated. I think it was my second favorite movie of that year. I think it was my second or third top pick to win Best Picture that year, and it wasn't even nominated. You know, it's funny. 2 of my top 3 or 4 picks for Best Picture nominations didn't even get nominations at all. Logan and Molly's Game. Molly's Game is fantastic. Wind River is another one that could have gotten nominated for Best Picture. And I'll be honest with you, I was really kind of... let me just pull it up, see if it got nominated for anything. Wind River, I remember walking out of the theater after watching Wind River and sitting down on a bench outside of the theater and just thinking about the movie. Just thinking about it. You know what? Not a single Academy Award nomination. That's another one that easily could have got nominated for Best Picture. So, Darkest Hour, fabulous. Molly's Game, fabulous. Wind River, fabulous. Disaster Artist is really great. I enjoyed that one a lot, too. Of course, my friend Erin Cummings is in that movie. She's got a small part in that movie. Those are all great movies to watch. Cobra writes, if a new Hellboy trailer isn't released before or at New York Comic Con, I'm going to start worrying. You know, I'm the guy who always tells everybody, relax. You know, people goes, the sky is falling. We don't have a trailer for whatever movie yet. And I'm just like, guys, the movie doesn't come out for 7 more months. Relax. You know, that's me, right? I'll tell you what, Koba. New York City Comic Con comes around. Now, I am expecting we're going to get a Hellboy trailer at New York City Comic Con, or at least during New York City Comic Con. But I'll tell you what. As the guy who's always telling people, relax. We don't need a trailer yet, relax. As the guy who's always saying that, I'll tell you what, I agree with you. If we don't get a Hellboy trailer either at or during New York City Comic Con, I am going to join you in going, what's going on? This isn't some small little indie film. This is Hellboy. And it's supposedly coming out in January. By the time we get to New York City Comic Con, it'll be 3 months before this movie comes out. Now, granted, there have been other films that have launched their first trailers much later than that, yes. But not a movie of the degree or the size of a Hellboy. So I expect we will get a trailer by, at, or during New York City Comic Con. And if we do not, I'll join you, Koba. I'm not going to be worried about the film, but I'll be worried about its release date. I'll be worried that they've already decided they're moving release dates and they just haven't announced it yet. But again, we'll have to just kind of wait and see. Alex Pitt writes, what happened to the question of the day? Oh, okay, yeah, so I very well may bring question of the day back. I might even bring it back this week. I might bring it back next week. I might bring it back in a month. I started doing question of the day as a kind of an engagement thing, like give you guys a practical thing that you can vote on and all that kind of stuff. But what I was discovering was only about 5% of the viewers were actually participating in the poll. So an episode of the John Campea Show gets 20 to 30,000 views. Okay, but we're only getting 1,000 to 2,000 votes per poll, so it was around 5%, roughly 5% of people were actually participating in the polls. So I thought, well, the show's been getting too long recently. I've been wanting to shorten the show up a bit because every once in a while, every 4 or 5 months, the show gets longer and longer and longer, and then I try to shorten it up, and then it starts getting longer and longer and longer again, then I try to shorten it up. So I kind of thought, you know what? I'll save a couple of minutes by taking out the question of the day for now, but maybe I'll bring it back. I'm not saying it's gone for good, not at all. I may bring it back. If you guys have a thought or an opinion about it, either positive or negative, do me a favor, email me. Email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com and let me know your thoughts about the question of the day. If you think I should bring it back, or if you're like, you know what, John, it was nice, but I don't really miss it. Let me know. I've just been looking for ways to shorten up the show. Let's see. Mr. Asylum Project, I like that name, writes, greeting from Zambia, Africa. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Asylum Project. A great fan of your channel. If Netflix fund and develop the Marvel shows, Daredevil, etc., how would Disney be able to gain ownership of them for their streaming service once their agreement ends? Okay, great question. This is a big thing that's been going on a long time. The true answer is nobody really knows 100% because only Netflix and Disney know all the details in their 400-page long contract. A lot of us speculate. We have basic information that we can form some hypotheses around, but we don't really know. The bottom line, though, is that Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, the Defenders, and whatever else, these are all Marvel characters. There very well could be a scenario here where there's several scenarios here, okay? Here's one. One scenario is, once Disney starts their streaming service, Netflix, because they funded and produced all the seasons that they've done so far with Daredevil, Daredevil 1 and 2, and upcoming 3, Jessica Jones 1 and 2, Luke Cage 1 and 2, Iron Fist 1 and 2, Defenders, Punisher 1 and 2, blah, blah, that all those existing things stay on Netflix forever. But any future seasons of those may be done over at the Disney streaming service. That's one scenario. Another scenario is that those characters will stay at Netflix in perpetuity, but Disney doesn't let them develop any other characters other than characters that are already involved in those series and they use as spin-offs. That's another scenario. Another scenario is they just work it out and just instantly all Daredevil, Jessica Jones, everything all immediately go to the Disney service. That's another possible scenario. The reality is there's a bunch of scenarios here that we simply don't know because nobody knows the intricate details of the contracts between the two companies other than the two companies themselves. Which leaves it for a lot of us to just then speculate about what might be involved in those things, right? So the honest answer is it really all depends on the details of the contract. The most likely scenario here, I believe, and I'm just speculating, nobody's told me this, the most likely scenario here, I believe, is this. Is that the existing seasons of the Netflix shows, the Netflix Marvel shows, will probably stay at Netflix. And they may even be able to produce more seasons of those shows moving forward, but at some point, be it a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line, you're going to see those go back over to Disney, either through existing mechanisms in their contracts or because of mechanisms they put into future deals to settle this whole thing. That's what I think will ultimately happen. But again, until we have all the information, and we don't, you raise a really great point, Mr. Asylum, we don't have all that information yet. So a lot of us are just kind of still sitting here waiting to see how this is all going to shake out. One thing we know for sure, when Disney launches their streaming service, the Marvel Netflix series don't just all automatically come over. They're going to still be on Netflix for at least a while. Yeah, maybe in perpetuity, maybe just for a while. We don't know that for sure yet. But when Disney launches, they'll still be at Netflix. Other than that, we're just kind of waiting to see how this all pans out. Ben Hayusa writes, did you see that? They went right through our roadblock, Sheriff Buford T. Justice. You some bitches couldn't close an umbrella. Another good line. So many great lines from Smokey and the Bandit. You know what? Smokey and the Bandit might be right up there with like They Live for like some of the best, and Evil Dead for some of the best one-liners. There are some great, usually spoken by Jackie Gleason. But yeah, there's some great stuff in that movie, man. James Welsh writes, which role that Burt Reynolds turned down would you like to see him play? Bond, Solo, or Michael Corleone? You know, there's also reports that he turned down Die Hard. That before Bruce Willis, the first guy they went to was Burt Reynolds. That was another one. That was a big one. You know, I'll say Solo. Don't get me wrong. I love Harrison Ford as Solo. But apparently with the Michael Corleone character, Burt Reynolds himself confirmed that Marlon Brando said he was going to leave the film if they cast Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds confirmed that. I don't know if Burt Reynolds was going to do the role anyway. So ultimately, Burt Reynolds said, I don't want the headache, and he walked away from The Godfather. Because apparently Marlon Brando said he'd leave the film if they cast Burt Reynolds. What all that is about and what the background of that is, I have no idea. So that's fine. Bond, he turned down Bond because he thought audiences would resist an American playing James Bond. And he may have been right. He may have been right. But Solo, if you're saying I have to pick one of them, I'll pick Solo, and here's why. Because I always got a little bit of a sense that Harrison Ford was channeling a little bit of Burt Reynolds in that role. When you go back and watch the original Star Wars: A New Hope, really look for that next time. I really feel, and I've always felt like Harrison Ford channeled a little bit of Burt Reynolds into that character. And like the whole line, like, not to me, sister, I'm in it for the money. Like, I could totally see Burt Reynolds saying that line, right? So no, I'm perfectly happy that Harrison Ford took that role, yes. But if I have to choose one of those ones you've watched, I'll say Solo, just because I kind of feel like the character might have been modeled a little bit after Burt Reynolds in the first place. So that's why I'll go with that one. Abraham Novello writes, recommend the show Psych, detective comedy drama that has fun with the genre like Supernatural. All 8 seasons are on Prime. My favorite show. I like it more than The Office, and I love The Office. You know what? That is one I see all over the place. And I hear a lot of people talking about Psych. I very rarely hear it ever mentioned in anybody's top 10 favorite shows, but it's always a show I hear brought up. And you know what's funny? It's funny you mention that right now. I go on Amazon every day just looking to see what the new tech deals are, but one of the things constantly being on the front page of Amazon Prime right now is Psych. Watch Psych. Watch Psych. And I've always heard good things about it. And I believe the one guy in it used to be on West Wing, if I'm not mistaken. I might be thinking about somebody else, but I think the one guy on it used to be on West Wing, which intrigues me. But I've always heard good things about it, and I've never watched a single episode. Never seen a single episode of Psych, but I always hear good things about it. It's probably one of those ones I got to get around to watching. So thanks for the recommendation, Abraham. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Chris Miner writes, have you seen Barry with Bill Hader? Solid show. Yeah, like the show a lot, actually. I wonder if I'll like season 2. Like, I wonder if the novelty of it may have worn off for me by the season finale. I feel like they almost played it out. But I'm going to be curious. Henry Winkler is great in it. At first, I thought Henry Winkler being in this is going to be a distraction for me. But honestly, the more episodes I got in, Henry Winkler's character just grew on me more and more and more and more. And I love Hader's character. It is really a good, solid little show. I wonder, though, and I've said this before, I think part of the reason it works so well for me is because I live in Los Angeles. And I know a lot of actors who go through that grind that they do on... For those of you who don't know anything about the show Barry, Bill Hader plays a hitman who goes to Los Angeles to carry out a hit. He accidentally wanders into an acting class and decides he wants to be an actor. And therein is the story. And it's really good. But I've often wondered, when I think about the show, how people outside of LA or New York, if they'd be able to kind of relate to the show. Because everybody in LA and everybody in New York loves this show because they all know people. They all know people who are exactly like the people in this show. I just wonder if people outside of LA and New York would get it as much. But I don't know. But yes, I like the show very much. All right. 2 more questions, then we got to wrap it up for today. Patrick Conway writes, do you see Fisk making it out of Daredevil Season 3? Yep, I do. Listen, one of the best things about Daredevil is Vincent D'Onofrio playing Kingpin. Wilson Fisk, he's great. Everybody loves him in that role. And when he's not there, everybody talks about how they miss him in that role. Don't get me wrong, everybody loves Daredevil too. Yes, absolutely. But there's also a big Kingpin-sized hole in everybody's heart when Kingpin's not on screen. You know what I mean? I do believe he's making it out of Season 3. I believe he's going to be around for another season or 2. Whether or not they end it with him just getting away, or they end the season with him going back to jail, either way, I think he makes it out. So I can't guarantee that, but that's my guess. All right. Zaya writes, which nerd character would you rather have as a roommate, Steve Urkel or Sheldon Cooper? I'll be honest with you, I never really watched either show. I'm not a fan of Big Bang Theory. I never watched much of, what was the Urkel show called again? Home House, House Big Home, Neighbors with Home House. I can't remember the name of the show. But I never really watched it. I mean, I've seen a couple episodes because in that era, everybody did, but never really watched the show, and I never really watched, I've only seen 3 or 4 episodes of Big Bang Theory, and I never liked it. So I'm going to have to take neither. I'm going to have to go with the neither on that one. I said just 2 more. Let's just take another couple quick ones here. Squarebuzz HQ says, thoughts on Iron Fist Season 2? I actually like it. I watched the first episode the other night. And I'll say this. It's definitely an improvement over Season 1. Episode 1 of Season 2 did not blow my socks off. I didn't love it, but the martial arts choreography were much better. The character, they fleshed him out. The character is more likable now. The Danny Rand character is more likable now on screen. And it's definitely an improvement over what we saw in Season 1. I'm not jumping up and down about it, but it's definitely an improvement. And I got to now go in and watch Episode 2 and see how it goes. But I will say so far I don't mind it. Yeah, so far I kind of like it. I'm not loving it, whatever, but I am kind of liking it, and I am impressed about the improvements. So that's certainly a good thing. Robbie J. Roycer writes, an online group wants me to join the crusade in boycotting the Venom movie. I just rolled my eyes. You know what's really stupid? Here's why boycotting stuff is idiotic, unless it's for a deep purpose. But especially movie, like people who want to boycott movies because why? Because they're not doing something I want them to do. Then you're setting up a culture where everybody's going to have to draw a line. And any movie that does something they don't want to do, they got to boycott, which means at some point, every movie is going to have half the people boycotting it. It's idiotic. Boycotts of movies just because you don't look, if you want to boycott a movie because you found out the guy who directed it murdered somebody before, that's a totally separate issue. Boycotting a movie because they're not doing something I want them to do in the movie, it's a childish thing to do. That's just childish. It's non-productive. It's idiotic. And if everybody starts to follow your lead, then that means every movie's going to have half the people boycotting them. It's idiotic and dumb. Don't go see a movie you don't want to go see. That's fine. But this whole notion of, I'm going to organize people to not go see this. Oh, you're pathetic. It's pathetic. Again, you want to boycott because you think there's a true big social injustice happening. You know, somebody was a murderer, somebody, abused their spouse, and you don't want to be there supporting. Okay, that's a separate thing, and you can deal with those on a case-by-case basis. I don't like their movies. Then you don't go see it. then you don't go see it. This childish, me saying childish when I'm the one doing voices like this, and I'm accusing other people of being childish. Anyway, my fellow childish people, acting extremely childish and saying, well, I don't like what they do to this movie, so I'm going to organize people to go see it. Just shut up. Let people who want to go see it, go see it. If you don't want to go see it, don't go see it. Look, I didn't want to go see Searching. I do now, but I didn't want to go see Searching. It looked stupid. It was a terrible trailer, so I didn't want to go see it. If people were to ask me, do you plan on seeing Searching? I'd say, no, I don't think the trailers look good. I don't want to waste my time going to go see it. You don't have me going, these stupid movies that, base themselves around social media and Facebook posts. We've seen too many of them. Let us organize and make sure nobody goes to see this movie. Oh, come on. Really? We don't have better things to do? We don't have better things to do. It's dumb and it's stupid and it's idiotic. There are exceptions. There are circumstances that on a case-by-case basis. But what I find most of the time is these people who try to organize these boycotts are just because I don't like those movies, so I want to organize and make people not go see them. It's stupid. It's stupid. Maybe my mind will change on that, but I just think it's kind of idiotic right now. Chris Warden writes, Mission Impossible Fallout just passed $700 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of the franchise and of Tom Cruise's entire career. Very impressive. Yep, absolutely. We talked about that at length a little bit earlier, and it's when you think about the long, storied career of Tom Cruise, the fact that this movie is now the biggest that Tom Cruise, this major Hollywood movie star, has ever done. It's an impressive feat, man. It's really an impressive feat. Tyler Yeats writes, have you seen Magnolia with Tom Cruise? Yes, I have. Magnolia is actually, might be his best performance ever. And it's a smaller supporting role. Tom Cruise has been nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Magnolia was the last one he was nominated for. He was nominated for Born on the 4th of July, which I believe was 89, I think. Then he was nominated for Jerry Maguire. I believe it was Jerry Maguire. And the last film he was nominated for was all the way back in 1999. He got nominated for Magnolia for Best Supporting Actor. And that's the last time. It was 18 years ago that Tom Cruise got nominated for an Academy Award. And I think he's great in it. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Somebody asked about my favorite Tom Cruise performances. If it is not my favorite Tom Cruise performance, I'm not saying it's my favorite Tom Cruise movie, but if it's not my favorite Tom Cruise performance in Magnolia, it's right up there. He's fantastic in it. Let's see. Sebastian writes, I gave a Box Office Mojo question for August. It said domestic totals were up like 45% a week ago. It now says domestic is up 50.6%. Why does it change? I heard like these numbers. I haven't seen these numbers anywhere, Sebastian. You're going to have to email me a link or something to show me where you're getting these numbers from. Like I saw that the summer was up like 14%. Which is huge. I haven't seen those numbers. So do me a favor, because I'd be curious to know. Send me a link where you're getting those numbers from. I'd be curious to see what's behind that. Luke1234 writes, now that we've seen Alien Covenant, do you think Fox should have let Neil Blomkamp make Alien 5? No, not at all. Not at all. Alien Covenant was a pretty good movie. Neil, he's got to prove himself to me, to be honest with you, because while District 9 was fantastic, Elysium was a big disappointment. Chappie was a big disappointment. To me, at any rate. I think those two movies are terrible. So, no, to be honest. And I thought Alien Covenant was good. I didn't think it was fabulous, and I wasn't jumping up and down about it, but I thought Alien Covenant was good. So, no, I don't think they should have let Neil Blomkamp make Alien 5, to be honest with you. I'm very curious to see what he does next, and we already know he's got a project lined up. But no, I think they went in the right direction. I really do. Even though financially it didn't work out. Ryan Irwin Deal writes, what actor has received acclaim awards and is highly regarded, etc., that you believe to be mediocre or bad overall? None. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Like received awards, gets multiple awards, high acclaim, blah, blah, blah. There's not a lot of actors who get all of that, but honestly, I can't think of any off the top of my head that I think are overrated or mediocre. Anthony Hopkins? No. Daniel Day-Lewis? No. Denzel Washington? No. Matthew McConaughey? No. He's a great actor. Yeah, any that like receive multiple awards and get lots of acclaim that I just think are mediocre. Honestly, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, maybe if I sat down and thought of it for an hour or two, I could come up with a name or two, but off the top of my head, I really can't think of anybody. Sebastian writes, following up, according to reporting, September 2017 was the highest grossing in history, $719 million. Do you think September 2018 will take that crown? Crazy Rich Asians, Searching, The Nun, and There Is Night School. Great slate. I don't know. Like, September does not look like it's all that strong. Like, we've got Predator. That's the one movie that could do some damage to the box office. But honestly, White Boy Rick isn't going to be a huge box office smash. A Simple Favor, while I'm looking forward to it, is not going to be a huge box office smash. The House with a Clock in the Walls, I don't think that's going to do all that great. They haven't been marketing it a ton, and I'm not hearing people saying they love the trailer, so I don't think that's going to be huge. Night School, which Kevin Hart, I think it'll do respectable. I'm a Kevin Hart fan, and these and Tiffany Haddish. I'm a big fan of Tiffany Haddish, but the trailers have not done it for me, and I don't know that they're hitting home with a lot of people. So I think Night School will do respectable, but I'm not expecting huge. Smallfoot, the animated movie's coming out. I don't expect that to do huge either. So I don't think so. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say no. I don't think it will. Sebastian follows up with, oh, we took a big jump here. All right. From a Star Wars superfan perspective, who is Snoke? He was just a character to me, but he seems to have wider relevance to Star Wars fandom. Why is that? I don't know who Snoke is, and honestly, I don't really care. I never have. Remember, when the original trilogy came out, Star Wars, Empire, Return of the Jedi, we never knew anything about Snoke, or about the Emperor. We knew nothing about the Emperor. Nothing. All we knew is that he was the Emperor. That was it. He was big, he was bad, he was powerful, and he was the Emperor. That's all we knew. We knew nothing about him. And we didn't need to. We knew what we needed to know about the Emperor, and we all loved the Emperor. We loved hating him, but we all loved the Emperor. And we knew nothing about him. And that was an argument I would have with a lot of friends of mine who were like, keep insisting, they've got to give us the backstory on Snoke. I'm like, why? They never, in the original trilogy, now after the original trilogy, we started to get loads of stuff about his background, but during the trilogy, we never knew squat about Palpatine. We never knew anything about the Emperor, and we didn't need to. We knew what we needed to know. Nothing else was important. And I, as a fan of Star Wars, I don't need to know more about Snoke. Would it be interesting? Sure. Yeah. It would be interesting. If Lucasfilm put out a 20-page PDF that says the exhaustive background of Supreme Leader Snoke, I'd read it. I'd be curious, and I'd be interested in seeing what it had to say. But again, like the Emperor, we didn't need to know anything about the Emperor when the original trilogy came out. I don't feel like we need to know any more about Snoke. He was big, he was bad, he was powerful. It's all we knew about the Emperor during the original trilogy, and I was fine with it. Cobra writes, how has Marvel and DC not sued each other for plagiarism more often? So many characters are basic copies, example, Catwoman and Black Cat. Well, it really, I think for a couple of reasons. Number one is the whole nuclear theory of mutually assured destruction. If Marvel were to ever launch something like that, they know DC could launch their own things against them. And then back and forth, boom, mutually assured destruction. But also, the characters are different enough. Like, you gotta prove, there's a heavy burden of proof for plagiarism. You can't copyright the word cat. You can't copyright the idea that somebody's a burglar. You can't copyright this, you can't copyright that. There are certain universal things that you can't just lay claim to and say we own. And to prove something like plagiarism, you have to show it to a really lengthy degree. to a really extensive degree. Now, I believe Marvel and DC over the history have had some court cases. I believe they have. But, you know, you have to pick and choose. And something like Black Cat and Catwoman, are there similarities? For sure they are. Are they carbon copy identical characters? I would disagree. I would disagree that they are carbon copy identical characters. And when you're talking about that, that's pretty much becomes where the burden of proof is. Can you prove that they're basically carbon copy identical? And a lot of the times you get a lot of characters that are absolutely very similar, but do they go far enough that you can pretty much say they're pretty much carbon copy the same character? Very, very rarely. And I think because of that whole mutually assured destruction thing, if you lower the standard of that, then you're opening the door for the other guy. If you're saying the standard isn't that high that you basically got to prove it's a carbon copy, and you lower that standard to say, it's just got to be pretty similar, then the other guy's going to have a big open doors to come in and attack you too, right? So it kind of goes back and forth on that just a little bit. All right, last question of the day. Curtis Lopez writes, I love how in Infinity War, with the first several minutes, we know that Thanos means business and that the build-up and wait for him is worth it. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it was very purposeful that they start that movie. They come right out of the gate. They had no time to... There was so much... This movie is so overcrowded and so overpacked with narrative. And that is one of the drawbacks of film. It is overpacked. They manage it well, but it is overpacked. But because it is so crammed full of characters and narrative, they got no time to waste. You know, they go right into it, right from the beginning of the moment that movie starts, boom, Thanos beating the hell out of Loki, out of Thor, out of the Hulk, destroying half of that, boom, right away. They don't waste any time to say, this dude means business. I agree with you, Curtis. That is a huge thing. All right, I've said this twice, but now really, this is the final question of the day. Static Space Sean writes, hey, John, fan for 5 years and sent in my first question last week. Made my day to see you answer it. Love your passion for movies. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much, Static Sean. And thank you so much for sending in questions. And a big thank you to all of you guys who send in questions. You know, my Patreon supporters are the backbone of what keeps this channel alive. But the other thing that really keeps this channel alive is you guys who send in super chat questions. Number one, because it supports the channel. Financially, it supports the channel, keeps us going, gives me, fact checker Jonathan, and Ray jobs. So thank you for that. But also you give us great topics for us as movie fans to talk about. So thank you for that. And it's my honor and privilege that you would send in a question. So it's my privilege to answer it. So thanks so much for that. All right. That will do it for today, guys. Everybody from Raymond, Verada, all the way down, don't worry. I'm going to take your questions. I'm going to save them, and they will be used in an upcoming companion video. We put up a couple companion videos this weekend. We're going to have some more going up this week. So again, if you've sent in a question from either Raymond Verada all the way down, do not worry. Your question is going to get addressed in an upcoming companion video this week. Keep your eyes open for that. All right, guys. That will do it for me for today for this installment of the John Campea Show. Don't forget, a little bit later this afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we've moved it from 2 to 3 p.m. At 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we've got open mic, all open discussion for an entire hour. Quite often we go over than that, so make sure you come back and join me then. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.